Hello YouTube, I'm just starting up the stream, so while I let it connect here and let people sign on, I'll uh, let you enjoy the non-copyrighted picking patterns of yours truly. I think we're having some technical difficulties, so I'm gonna have to restart the stream. Hello, sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties. But it appears that the stream is now live, so I will see if we can get some people into the chat. But until then, please enjoy the musical stylings of uncopyrighted picking patterns by yours truly. Alright, hello YouTube. Today I have a couple different topics I'm going to talk about, but first off I'll start with explaining what's going on with the AI here. You'll notice that the AI is picking up about where it left off. I had it running in the background during the technical difficulties at the beginning here, but you'll notice that the score is starting to get a little higher, and hopefully throughout the process of this stream, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the intelligence process. Seems to be a little choppy, but I think we can live with it. So you'll notice that the title of the stream today is a little interesting, but I'll be explaining that. So I'll get right into it. So the first topic that I'll be talking about today is the Dajjal number system. Now, some of you may be wondering what the Dajjal number system is. Well, you're in the right place. And some of you might not care, but I'm going to keep talking anyway. Alright, so basically, the Dajjal number system is, well, the number system that we use in any everyday situation currently in the world is the decimal system, which is a base 10 number system. It is when we get to 10, that's when we start seeing a second digit. So when you see the number 10, that is equivalent to the quantity of 10. And basically, with the Dajjal system, or in some cases called the duodecimal system, basically what the Dajjal system is a base 12 number system. Now, you may be wondering why is this relevant? Well, there actually is a large group of people that have, for many years, in fact, well into the 1900s and even before that, that have been pushing for a change to a base 12 system. And you may see some aspects of that, and you can see how we have maybe a dozen eggs or 12 months in a calendar. But there are some reasons why a 12-based number system would be more beneficial to an everyday life situation. So basically, what is special about the number 12 is that it is the smallest number with an abundant amount of factors. So basically, if you think about the number of factors, so factors are the numbers that can be multiplied together to get a larger number. And so when we think of the number 10, those factors are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. That's just 4 factors. But if you think of the number 12, then the factors are significantly more. You have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And the benefits of having this is when it comes to small everyday calculations like addition, multiplication, and division, the base 12 number system it makes it a little bit easier to, 1, memorize multiplication tables, and 2, to divide things into fractions, and I'll talk a little bit more on each of those. So first, with the multiplication tables, you will see that if you multiply a number in the base... okay, first off, I should explain how the base 12 number system works. So I'm going to pull up a paint here. Okay, so basically, in the regular decimal system, you have 9 digits. You have 10 digits. So you have 0, you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4. That is not a 4. 4. You have 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And these digits are used to create every number in the decimal system. We'll get rid of that one a little bit more. And what happens is when you reach the base number, which in the decimal system is 10, you go to a second digit, which is why 10 is 10. Now, in the decimal system, the base number is 12. So you may be wondering, how can someone get to the number 12 only having these digits? Well, the answer is to add more digits. So in the decimal system, there are 2 more digits. Those digits are dec and L, and the L is a squiggly E thing. And these digits make up the quantities for 10 and 11. And you may think that having more digits is more complicated, and in some senses it is, but I'll explain that the decimal system kind of makes up for that when it comes to multiplication and division. So yeah, we have these new numbers here, and so what happens is, just like how you would use a 1, 2, 3 through 9, you can put these in the first place here. So let's say you have the number which has the digits 1 dec, then that would be 12 plus 10, so that would be 22. But in terms of decimal, you wouldn't think of it in terms of decimal. That's just a translation. Okay, so what happens when we look at a multiplication table, even in decimal, you'll see that eventually, if you keep multiplying something over and over and over again, then you will see that every single number creates a pattern. So let's say you had 1 times 1, well obviously that's going to be 1, so that's a bad example. But let's say you have maybe the 4 tables. So you have 4, you have 8, you have 12, you have 16, you have 20, and then you have 24. So that is how the pattern restarts, and it keeps going. But the problem with the decimal system is that these patterns are only evident in a couple different numbers. I mean, every single number has a pattern, but some of the patterns are very strung out. And what happens with the Dajjal system, because of its many different factors, is that the Dajjal system actually creates a number table and a multiplication table that has very easy to learn patterns throughout most of these digits here. So if you and I can you can look up a multiplication table and see this is true. I don't have one readily available, but if you think, for instance, the 4s, like we said, then you would still have 4, you would still have 8, but then it would simply go to 0, because the next number would be in decimal, it would be 12, but since that's the base number, you would have a 1 and then a 0. So that makes even the multiplication table in the decimal system that was easy even easier, because now the only possible digits you can get by multiplying something by 4 are to end the number. So the only digit you can get in this spot right here is either a 0, a 4, or an 8. And this happens in almost all of these digits. So there are some exceptions. 7 tends to be a little radical, but like I said, all of the digits do have a pattern. And this doesn't just apply to a number table for just one number. You can think of it in terms of the squares of numbers. Now, you may not have thought about this, but when you square a number, even in decimal, there is only a finite amount of digits that can be this last digit here for a squared number. So if you have, so let's just go through some. You start with 0, because 0 times 0 is still 0. Then 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So you have 0, 1, 4, and then it goes 9, 6 for 16, and then 5, and then 6 again, and then it comes back to 9, and back to 4, and back to 1, and then back to 0 at 100. And this pattern goes up and back down throughout the rest of the digits, throughout the rest of the squares. And what happens in the Dajjal system is this number, this pattern is decreased to simply 0, 1, 4, 9, 4, 1, 0. Now, if you want to go out and do the math, you can, but you can take my word for it. So this would make the process of squaring numbers a lot simpler, and could actually have applications in computer programming, like I have going on here. But I'm not currently applying that. But also, like I said, in terms of division, you will see that it is a lot easier to divide a number in the Dajjal system, especially in low numbers, which are numbers that you would use in every day. So let's say you have a number like 1/3, and that's 1 over 3. Well, in base 10, this would go out to a decimal of 0.3 repeated, or infinite 3's after the decimal. But in the Dajjal system, this is simply 0.4. And you may think that that is a higher number, but in terms of a fraction, that is the same quantity, because it is 4 over the base number, which is 10. But since 10 is 12 in this case, then you get a number that comes out to the equivalent of 1/3. And And this is true for many of the smaller fractions and would also apply to larger fractions as they are factorable. So, it is interesting that so what happens with the Dajjal system and why some people are pushing, and probably to no avail, for people to use base 12 more often is because in complex math it changes nothing. So when it comes to calculating pi, it's still going to be an irrational number of digits that just keep on going. Now you may say you will see that it is a different number, like you can see how this decimal is different from well, this is not a decimal because decimal is base 10, but you can see how the fractional number is different in the Dajjal system. But when it comes to using things in everyday life, because of the ease of multiplication using the patterns of the multiplication tables, it's easier for things like making fractions of groceries, or in terms of how I said before, you can get a dozen eggs. Well, if you just wanted a quarter dozen, if there were only 10 eggs, then you would have to get 2.5 eggs, and that wouldn't make sense. But if you want a quarter dozen of a dozen eggs, which is what normally happens, is there's 12, then you can get 3 eggs. So and also with how easy it is to memorize the multiplication table, it makes it a little easier for kids who maybe just don't get math at all to memorize these tables, so that they can get by with the simple maybe making of change and things like that. So, like I said, with how intertwined the decimal system is into our society, I don't see this ever being actually applied as a societal thing, but it is possible that this could be applied in a more abstract way, possibly with computer programming to calculate things in a more efficient manner. And with that, I will be moving on to the next topic, but in the meantime, I'm going to play a short ad. So I will be right back. Okay, it looks like we're back. So I'll be moving on to the next topic. And the next topic is a turn in a different direction. It is a more psychological topic, and that topic is group polarization. Now, group polarization is a phenomenon seen in the psychology world where when a group gets together and the group is all generally thinking along the same terms on a situation. Let's say if you had a group of jurors in a room and all of them were basically thinking that the guy's guilty and they maybe weren't sure. If you get people who are somewhat like-minded into a room with each other and they are isolated, then you will see that their ideologies are exaggerated by the group of people they are with. And this is a common phenomenon, like I had said. So basically, this is an important phenomena in psychology because it applies to a lot of different situations in our society today. So this can apply to things like politics. So what do we see in politics? Well, first off, when it comes to a presidential debate or a presidential election, the process of electing a president is first the parties have primaries, and these primaries are where within the party the different voters can vote for a nomination for that party to run against the opposing party's nomination. Well, how does this apply to group polarization? Well, everything about this applies to group polarization. So what you'll see, and this does happen a lot, is that the politicians that are involved in these primaries are very, very far to their side when it comes to the debates. So when let's say a Republican, so Republicans are normally conservative. Let's say when you watch a Republican primary debate, then in the primaries you will see that the candidates tend to go towards the extreme of their party. So in the case of a Republican, they would say that they would be very conservative in their manner and very conservative in the things they claim to support. And this is interesting because once they get out of the primaries, they will start to come back and be a little more middle ground. And there are some outside factors in this situation when it comes to a actual presidential debate, actual presidential election, and not a primary. They are attempting to gain the voters from the opposite side, which will give them the edge. But it is somewhat of an example. But what you will see as a perfect example is when the different parties have rallies or conferences. And what happens at these conferences is everyone there, or let's say 90%, some substantial portion of the people there are in the same ideological spectrum. So what happens is when it comes to talking about different topics, the people will tend to get even further towards the extreme of their party while being at these conferences, and the general trend of the conference will be for the candidates and for the people attending to become slightly more towards the ideological extreme. This is useful in the terms of politics because it is a really good method for gaining support and pushing people to be more towards their cause and ideology. But this can also be dangerous in terms of maybe, let's say, if we have a group of young people that are all out and just hanging out. With the idea of group polarization, this can add to the effects of peer pressure. So when someone says, hey, we should go do something, then, and some people might have been thinking about it, but they weren't necessarily sure they wanted to do this, in the realm of group polarization, those people will amplify their mild desire to go do this activity, and it will they will become sure that they want to participate in this activity. You can see this in even more lighthearted situations, like let's say there's a sports team at a restaurant. Now, if you've ever been to a restaurant with a sports team you're on, you'll notice that the etiquette tends to get thrown out the window. So maybe activities like messing with people's drinks or disrespecting the waiter slash waitress start to arise from the situation, and things that you didn't think that you would ever do in a restaurant, you start to do because you are around these people, and everybody is starting. The minute one person starts something, then everyone starts to do more and more extreme activities. So this is something that occurs even in everyday life, but it is something that philosophers and psychologists have been worrying about and have been spreading knowledge about for a while now. Even I believe it was Alexander Hamilton, when creating the Constitution and starting the nation, he exclaimed that it is important to have many different factions, because if there are more groups out there with different ideologies, then the general group polarization will be canceled out. Even if that minor group becomes slightly more towards their ideological extreme, there will be another group with the opposite ideological extreme that can cancel out with them. And so this could be problematic if one specific political party starts to dominate the political system. Now, with just two, this can still become problematic, but it is a little bit harder, just because, like I said, since the political parties tend to be opposing in view, they will cancel each other out sometimes. So it is not as much of a problem as it could be. But another example that I just threw in here was that you can see this on the internet a lot, and so basically what I mean by that is, what happens is, if you can't see someone face to face, you're already a little more out of your shell in what you will do and what you will say. So the example that I'm bringing up here is Nickelback. So you may laugh at that, but basically what I'm saying is that Nickelback was never, I mean, they were never a good band, but they weren't bad, they weren't terrible. And what happens is, the minute one person says they don't like them, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I mean, they're not the best, then that's when group polarization kicks in. So what happens is, everybody says, oh, they're not okay, they're not the best, and then the next day they say, oh, they're pretty bad, because the thing is with group polarization is, you want to stand out as an opinion. That is your natural tendency. You want to be expressed and to be noticed. So you will see that the effects of group polarization cause people to be a little bit more extreme in their analysis and in their opinions. And so that's exactly what happens, is that people say, hey, Nickelback isn't that good, and hey, I don't like Nickelback, and hey, Nickelback is terrible. And then that's when the internet and its monsters take hold of it. So in my opinion, and from my outside perspective, I would say that Nickelback isn't the best band, but there isn't really a problem with what they're trying to do. But that's just an opinion, and you can take that as you will. And with that, I'll be moving on to my next section. It's a little less structured, but I will explain that after another short ad. So I will be right back. Okay, I believe we're back. If we are not, I'm sorry for that, but it is still recording, so I'm going to keep going. In this section of the stream, I have something I wanted to try, so this will be a little more free-flowing, a little less structured, but we'll see how it goes. So basically what's going to happen is I have a piece of paper over here that I've written down 25 nouns, 25 verbs, and 25 adjectives / adverbs. And I have a random number generator on my calculator, and I'm just going to pick 3 random numbers. So I'll get a noun, a verb, and an adjective. And whatever that says, I'm just going to try to explain over here in this paint window. So I'll see what we come up with. So the first number is 4, so that is man for the noun. The next number is 2, so that is fly for the verb. And the next number is 19, so that is vigorously for the adverb. So we have a man flying vigorously. So let's try to explain that. So we will see we have a man here. We'll start with his shoe, and then he has a leg and a little bit of a buttocks there, and a very pronounced knee and a random jetting straight line that will need to be removed. Alright, and we'll keep going here. So then we have the rest of the guy here, and here's his head and his arms and his hands. You know, paint isn't the most eloquent medium of art, but we will see what we can come up with. So let's say if he's flying vigorously, that must mean he's putting a lot of effort into it. So we're going to assume he's going fairly fast. So that means we just need to put more lines coming off of him, because that's what happens when you're fast. You get some lines coming off of you. If he's flying very vigorously, well, if he's flying in general, then we will need to assume that the Bernoulli effect is in play here. So we will assume that the air above him is going slightly faster, so there's going to be more lines up here than down here. There's only a couple, and they're pretty short, which means that it's not going as fast. And then if he's going really fast, then he's going to have this sort of high pressure zone here that you'll see even in Mario Kart. If you get going fast enough, you get this big nozzle here. But yeah, alright, so I think we're getting somewhere. He's got some hair, but it's flying in the wind because he's majestic. Okay, So, if we have a man flying vigorously, then he must be pretty intense. So we'll have to give him some intense expression. And of course he needs an ear. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. But he's also going to be flexing a little because I would assume, I mean, I've never flown without a aircraft before, but I would assume that if you are flying, you need to be flexing your muscles a little bit. So he's going to have some extra definition. And I think we're starting to get to a final project, final piece of work here. And he's got a shirt on, but we'll assume you can see a little bit of his abdomen region. And I think we have gotten to a relatively finished product, so we will just put some finishing touches on here. You know, I like the airbrush. It gives a little bit of a nice feel to it. We'll give him some brown pants because, you know, if you're flying vigorously, you should probably wear some khakis. I feel like that would really it wouldn't necessarily help your aerodynamics, but it would show off that you were going pretty fast with them flapping in the wind. We're gonna get some black here for the shoes. We'll just assume that he's got some streamlined shoes there. And we'll give him a green shirt because I think if he's flying fairly vigorously, then he must be trying to show off. So he wants to stand out on the background of the sky here. But basically, what it seems we've come out to is it seems that we've created Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, so that's interesting, but that is what we've come up with. So with that, I will play a final ad, and then I will leave it to questions for you guys, so if you guys want to think of that. Alright, I believe we're back. So with that, I will just see, do you guys have any specific questions or questions about anything in general that you want me to answer while we're still going live? I'll just stick around and answer those. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting, I'll just look over here at the AI. So it seems that the score has reached 5 digits. That's fairly significant compared to where it was in the beginning. And it has reached the 9th generation, so we should start to see it being a little bit smarter. It does seem that some of the programs still aren't making it up off the screen, but that's expected. Each of the generations will have its duds, but it seems that some of them are starting to take on some of these J shapes or L shapes, and that's something that would be practically thought of as a good way of catching the red ball as it falls here. And it is interesting to see that there are some repeating patterns like this one that just goes straight up the middle. You can think of these as the different species in a genetic system. So each different pattern is sort of a species, and you can see how the different child programs will start to take on minor traits that are different, and if those traits are better than the old species as it was, like this L that is going up, then it will continue to do these species. I think this L has caught it a couple times, which is probably one of the it is probably one of the best or second best programs down here in the left hand corner. But it doesn't look like any questions are coming up in the chat, so with that I will let this last generation ride out, but I will give you some more picking patterns to listen to. So I will be signing off here in a moment, so thank you for joining me on today's stream, and I will be informing you of the next one on my Twitter page, which you can find on the About page of my YouTube channel. Thank you.